No, that's not right. You're going to care a lot more about how Social Security does if you are in it with everybody else. And that's what he does. Every year, he returns a portion of his congressional budget to the U.S. Treasury. He doesn't even spend all the money they give him. The other guys, they spend every penny of it, and then they ask for more. So Ron Paul is the guy who has lived what the Founding Fathers spoke of. He's been saying the same thing for 31 years. He's been warning us of all the things that are happening. And there's some guys that they've recently moved over and changed some of their positions to line up with him. But why should we vote for them when we can vote for the guy who had it right to begin with?
That's right.
There's a lot of them going to try to copy him now. Don't pay attention to what they did when they were in office. Just pay attention to what they're saying now. Now, he walked the walk. Now, as a young man, Dr. Paul served in Vietnam, not in Vietnam, but during the Vietnam War. He was a medical doctor. He was patching up guys that got arms and legs and wounded in the Vietnam War. And his campaign has received more contributions from the military personnel than any other candidate. Our military members are voting with their wallets who they want to see. I can't conclude this thing without talking about the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Okay? And that is I don't want to know what you want to call it. Some would call it the war in Iraq. Some would call it the police exercise in Iraq, the nation-building exercise in Iraq. That's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. There are many people that they love all Dr. Paul's positions. They've just got one hang-up, and that he voted against the Iraq War, and that his position is, look, we have a coming financial crisis. We cannot afford a welfare state at home and police the world abroad. Okay? He's saying, no, we've just got to do what the founders said, avoid foreign entanglements, make our own borders strong with our military force. Instead of having weak borders, but yet run around and try to tell the rest of the world and have basically military garrisons in over 100 countries. So there's 190 countries in the world. We've got military garrisons in over 100 of them on 700 bases. We're building 14 gigantic bases in Iraq right now, indicating a desire to stay, part of somebody, I don't know who, a desire to stay for decades. Certainly not the military members who are sending their earnings to Dr. Paul. So, I guess I could ask for a show of hands and say, does anyone here tell me why they think we went to Iraq? What we're hoping to do there now? Maybe some of you could give different answers to that question. But I have a copy here of the authorization to use force in my little binder. Okay? And when you go through it, there are really only two reasons in the authorization to use force. One was to deal with the threat to the United States posed by Iraq. Well, there was none. There was none. Iraq was a tiny little nation that they weren't as powerful as the nation that we humbled in 1991, during which time I was in the military. I was itching to go. They didn't say I was in the reserve at that time. They didn't send me. But they weren't nearly as powerful as they were in 1991. They had nothing to do with 9/11. There's more Al-Qaeda in Iraq now than there was before we went in. They're recruiting people because they're saying, see, the Christians are occupying you. The other reason for the authorization of the use of force, if you go and look it up online, the authorization to go to war in Iraq, and you find the actual House resolution, these are the two reasons given. Dr. Paul does not believe that we should go to war to enforce UN resolutions. We should go to war to the security interests of the United States of America, to defend us. We shouldn't go to war to police the world. We shouldn't nation build. And that's been, George Bush ran on that in 2000. I remember when he said it. I said, yeah, that's right. What are we doing trying to build nations in Kosovo, Yugoslavia? How is that our business? Anyone did the same thing. What are the costs of nation building? Well, once you do the right accounting before it's done, and by the way, Dr. Paul did vote to use force in Afghanistan, because that was different. The Taliban in Afghanistan, they were hosting Al-Qaeda. They did attack us. And so he voted to use force and force regime change over there. He didn't vote to stay in for forever, like we're trying to do. Okay? So he's not a pacifist. He just doesn't like to start trouble. He wants to finish it. And if we're spread all over the world, we're weak. Other people can take advantage of us because we're off in everybody's business and we don't have enough. We've expended our resources doing other things. $1 trillion in cash borrowed from the communist Chinese, which you will have to pay back. Dead and maimed servicemen, and tying down our military so that they are less able to respond to real threats. Now, forgive me, I'm going to turn the light on here briefly. Raise your hand if you know who Sun Tzu is. Sun Tzu? Good, several of you know. Sun Tzu was basically a war counselor in an ancient Chinese land, and his maxims were recorded in a book called The Art of War. And The Art of War is a classic that military men throughout the ages, it's in West Point. Napoleon carried a copy in his saddlebags. The Art of War was the ultimate strategy book. And here's some things he said in The Art of War. He who wishes to fight must first count the cost. When you engage in actual fighting, if victory is long in coming, then men's weapons will grow dull and their ardor will be dampened. If you lay siege to a town, you'll exhaust your strength. Again, if the campaign is protracted, the resources of the state will not be equal to the strain. And now when your weapons are dull, your ardor dampened, and your strength exhausted, and your treasure spent, other chieftains will spring up to take advantage of your position. Then no man, however wise, will be able to avert the consequences that must ensue. In war, then, let your great object be victory, not lengthy campaigns. He also said, in the practical art of war, the best thing of all is to take the enemy's country whole and intact. To shatter and destroy it is not so good. So, too, it is better to recapture an army entire than it is to destroy it. Are y'all tracking with this? We're doing things the exact opposite of the way everybody in the military with good sense since 2,000 years ago says you ought to do it. Let's say, no, we're going to throw everything out, we're going to rebuild that nation from the ground up in our image. He says, no, don't do that. They say, we're going to build 14 bases and stay from 10 to 100 years. He's saying, no, don't do that. The general who advances without coveting fame and retreats without fearing disgrace, whose only thought is to protect his country and do good service for his sovereign, is the jewel of the kingdom. The last time we ever left a country that we entered that I can find is 1982, when Reagan sent the Marines into Beirut and suicide bombers blew them up, and he said, you know what, we just don't understand the irrationality of Middle East politics, and he pulled them out. You know why? Because he advanced without coveting fame, and he retreated without fearing disgrace. His only thought was for the good of his country. That's the last time we've ever left a country that we entered. And even if we succeed, I've got some quotes from the Constitution of Iraq for you. Okay? This is, if you say we're fighting for anything, we're fighting to build the nation of Iraq, this is the nation we're building. These are direct quotes from the Iraqi Constitution, of which I have a copy here. It is the worst of Islamic fascism and American State Department socialism combined in one badly written document. This is from the Iraqi Constitution. First, Islam is the official religion of the state. Since when did Americans put our lives on the line to build a state religion, especially Islam? Is the official religion of the state and is a fundamental source of legislation. No law that contradicts the established provisions of Islam may be established. This is the Iraqi Constitution. Children have right over their parents in regard to upbringing, care, and education. So if you're planning on being a young parent, you better, who's going to exercise that right? It's going to be the state. It's going to be the state getting in between mom and their children so that every parent will have fear. If you're not doing it the way whoever's in charge says, they can get your kid. The state ensures the above, that is individuals and families, a suitable income and appropriate housing. Every citizen has the right to health care. Now some of you may be thinking, what's wrong with that? And I can understand that. But it's a whole other subject, but let me give you the short version. What is a right? I'll tell you there's an acid test. see if something's right. If the state has to